Welcome to today's episode. I'm Brian Fleming.
I'm Jamie Fleming.
What are we talking about today, Jamie?
We are talking about the 5 barriers to a great sex life.
Wow. All right. So there are probably more than 5, I guarantee it. But these are 5 that we've discovered people deal with. And at the end of this episode, we have a very, very interesting story with a killer lesson you don't want to miss, because you don't want to be the guy we'll be discussing in your marriage. So I'll just say that. We'll hook there, so stick around to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, we want to let you know that if you haven't already, if you go to marriagebattleplan.com, marriagebattleplan.com is where Jamie and I have an online course. It's literally only just over an hour's worth of video.
Mm-hmm.
But you could spend a week in it if you wanted to, or more, discussing these things with your spouse. Because what we do in Marriage Battle Plan, in this course, it literally teaches couples just like you how to communicate better in your marriage so you can have less friction in arguments and fewer fights, and actually enjoy your marriage more. Because you know how to communicate better. Like, money's a big thing that destroys marriages, but a lack of ability to communicate clearly kills marriages.
Absolutely.
And a big part of our mission is to help breed this next generation coming up, to help them, all of us now, but especially to turn the generational tide so that there are marriages in the future that exist where people actually know how to communicate better.
Yeah.
And it saves families. It affects kids and everything. So in Marriage Battle Plan, what we do is we teach you proven military battle strategies, how we communicate on the battlefield, in the military, in actual war. We teach you 7 or 8 concepts to specifically and easily, very simply apply to your marriage, that you can see how to do it. It's very simple, so you just get each other. You understand each other.
Yeah.
And the biggest benefit of that is that you walk away and you always have a framework. The biggest benefit of the Marriage Battle Plan is you always have a framework for communicating with your spouse or with anybody. Mm-hmm. But in this case, with your spouse, you always have a go-to. You always know, always know what to do. Mm-hmm. So go to marriagebattleplan.com. Check that out. We have some great resources there.
Yeah.
Oh, cliche marriage advice of the week. Before we get into our lesson, we have some cliche marriage advice of the week. We like to share some of the bad pieces of marriage advice, or not bad. It's just the crap you always hear. Yeah. Everyone's written a book on it. They just put their own name on it. Mm-hmm. It's cliche. People like you and I are probably so tired of hearing, oh God, another marriage book is going to say the same crap that he said or she said,
Yeah.
What's that today, Jamie?
A good marriage is hard work.
Okay. There could be multiple angles of that. What do you think?
Well, let me think about it. A good marriage is hard work. I don't agree with that.
At least it's not our experience.
Not with us. Like,
been married over 15 years, yeah.
Yeah, like if it's a good marriage, it wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be hard work. And
that doesn't mean you don't struggle, that you don't have issues, or that you're always in a honeymoon phase, which that would be probably the next dumb piece of advice. But for most people, again, there's exceptions to everything. So anything we see on here, there's always going to be one person going, it's like, okay, you're the exception. Congratulations. Your life is great. A good marriage is hard work. 15 and a half years of marriage, we when we heard that, we both kind of looked at each other like, not really, like, we've had a great marriage.
Yeah.
Like, we're happily married.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't mean, like I said, that we don't go through things in life, or that we don't argue or have issues sometimes.
Or you have to put effort in.
But
hard work.
That it's hard work. Like, no, it's not. Or it shouldn't be. It's not supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, the only relationships I've ever been in that were hard work were the bad ones. Mm-hmm. Like, bad relationships were hard work.
Yeah.
Like, that's why people have exes, because they were hard and non-negotiable, and something was hard enough where it broke the relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we're not the first ones to say that, but yeah. I don't think a good marriage is hard work. I think a bad marriage is hard work.
Yeah. Yep. exactly.
And you could argue and say, well, some people just maybe they're more conflicting individuals. They rub each other wrong more. Maybe they're not as good of a fit for each other as another couple would be. That could be. But also, if you have all that friction because you just don't jive with that person very well or mesh with that person very well, is that a good marriage? Or are you staying together for other reasons, because we have kids or whatever? Like, that's understandable, these different things, even though they're not always good pieces of advice. But I don't think a good marriage is hard work.
No, I really don't.
Because because what you have to do is define what is a good marriage. What defines a good marriage? I think one characteristic pertaining to this would be that both people are open and honest with each other, and they're receptive to what the other one has to say.
Yeah.
We were at dinner the other night with two of our good friends, and we asked them, what would you? They've been married like 13 years, and we said, what's been a key to your marriage success? Because they're very happy together. And the husband said, if I remember correctly, he said, I never try to be right. Like I don't
care if I'm right.
Yeah, he's like I never care that much if I'm right. There's a possibility I am wrong with things, and I'm okay with that. And her response was, if I'm wrong, I don't have any problem admitting it. We just want to get past whatever it is. So you have a person who isn't always trying to be right, and a person who, if they're wrong, they're okay admitting that. They just want to have fun and be peaceful together and enjoy each other.
Yeah.
Well, what could go wrong? That doesn't sound like a hard marriage. That sounds like a good marriage, and it doesn't sound like hard work.
No.
So, getting to the talking points here.
Yep.
So these were the 5 barriers, five of many, but 5 barriers that we found to a great sex life. Because let's be honest, everyone wants to have great sex.
Yeah.
They just do. You're human. All right.
Yep.
People go through different things in life, different phases of life, different experiences of life. Both people do. And so it can be a rocky territory with this.
Yeah.
But 5 barriers to a great sex life. What's number 1?
Undealt with past abuse.
Past abuse that is undealt with.
Yep.
What do you think? What are your thoughts?
So true. I was raped and molested when I was a kid by 2 of my uncles. So then we got married, 21 years old. And I didn't really do a lot of counseling or anything like that really early on in our marriage. And so there was a lot of things that I was like, no, won't do it. Won't do it because that's the way I was raped. Like, nope.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything like that people would say, wow, that's horrible.
No.
It's just like some people, like if you grew up in an abusive household and somebody let's say you had a dad who'd always grab you by the back of the hair and, hurt you, just maybe physically abuse you. Well, if you're in a heat of passion and, you're groping or pulling, grabbing your spouse and you're in the moment and there's this trigger for them, it's like you got to be respectful of that, but you also need to be aware of it. And that can affect someone's sex life, it could be a number of things. We put here also, like you said, there's certain days. Tell us about that.
Well, there's days still. I've done a lot of counseling since, or early on in a marriage, and still do sometimes when I need it. And there's still times that even though I feel like I'm healed pretty good. Obviously I can improve, but there's just days where I don't want to be touched. I just don't want to be. I don't want to have sex. I don't really want you to even really touch me. A peck's fine, but we like to goof around in the kitchen, smack each other's butts or whatever. Well, on those days, I'm just like, I don't want any of that.
Yeah. And as a husband, and as a high sex drive person, we're going to talk about that. Usually there's a high and low. Sometimes people are both low or both high, or there's an off balance. Like, if you're the person wanting sex on that day or at that time, you can take that personally. Like, oh, he doesn't want me, or she doesn't want me. It's a rejection of me. well, it's not in this kind of case. It's you have to understand the intent of their feeling or what they're communicating. It's not that they don't love you or they don't want to please you. It's that they're having this war in their mind about something else that had nothing to do with you, and maybe even happened, like in our case, before we ever knew each other.
Yeah.
And so you can't take that too personal.
And then sometimes it goes the opposite direction. Like sometimes I want him to hold me. I want him, we cuddle and, I'm kind of the lower sex drive, but like I said, we'll get there. But I want all the non-sexual affection. Like I want him to hold me and hug me and kiss me and to, just tell me everything's going to be okay. I'm sorry you're having an off day. So like.
Yeah. And not leading to sex.
Yeah. But not leading there.
Which I've found most of the time that's usually a woman having that idea. The guys, I can't speak for every guy, but most guys are in it for the payoff. Like the ending, the ecstasy, the boom, the gloriousness, and then we fall asleep. Or go eat chips or something or whatever. It's like, all right, time to go do something else, Mm-hmm. But, there's a difference there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because... most guys aren't like, I just want to lay and cuddle after sex. Like, that's usually a woman saying that. It's not that a guy wouldn't. Most guys I talk to, at least, it's that hasn't been the case. But everyone's different. Mm-hmm. So, number 2.
No communication.
So, not communicating, not communicating about, well, what?
Well, being honest when giving it or being open when receiving it.
Yeah, like receiving communication. We can clarify.
Oh, excuse me. Yes,
receiving
let's
what?
Clarify that.
Giving it or receiving it. Like, yeah. You can tell we have fun with this stuff. And why shouldn't we? But be honest when giving communication about what you like or want or what you don't like or don't want. A lot of people are afraid to kind of say, like, if they're uncomfortable, well, you might be afraid that, like, oh, well, they'll judge me because, like, what do you mean you don't want to do this or that, or, don't
or
you care
the other
about
way,
me?
Or the other way, that they want that, and then, they're afraid of judgment for that.
Yeah, like, hey, I want it this way, but what will he or she think of me if I tell them that? That's a lack of communication going on right there. Yeah. And the thing is, like, every human being has things that turn them on sexually and arouses them, and they don't always understand why. Like, we've always said on this topic, like, people don't generally choose what turns them on.
Yeah.
They can just be like, this just turns me on. I have no idea why. They didn't choose it. Like, it's like hey, when I see that, it makes me feel that way. Or when that happens, it's like, that's one thing, like, we just as humans don't control. Like what is. And so, I've said before, it's like, I mean, you're going to have a hard marriage if you can't even talk about what you like sexually. Even, for fear of judgment. I mean, there might be a number of years you go in your marriage before you get to that point. But, like, I would say, man, if you can't have that, like, you're either going to have a marriage that's not as good as it could be, or you married the wrong person, or don't be surprised if it ends in 3 to 5 years, because sex is one of those things where if somebody doesn't get satisfied the way their needs need to be met,
well, they're going to go somewhere where they can get it.
They will, whether it's another person cheating or pornography is so openly available now, way more than even when we were kids. Yeah, that it's like, people, they will gravitate toward things, and I don't recall the verse exactly. But I know there's a Bible verse, and I can't quote it right now. Sorry about that. But we talked about putting it in here, and then I forgot. Where it basically says, don't deprive your spouse of sex. And if you do it only for time, like of praying or fasting or something. But have a planned time or day that you will come back together sexually, so that either of you or one or both of you won't be tempted sexually to go somewhere else for it. Piece of hair on your lip.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and on your eye. But and you have to think about that. Yeah. Being So being fearful of what you like or don't like and voicing that.
Yeah.
Like that, in Marriage Battle Plan, we talk about enemies that destroy marriages. If you like or dislike something, but you're afraid to talk to your spouse about the person you're married to, that's an enemy, and it will divide.
Yeah.
It might be a little cut. It might just be a little division, a little wedge between you. But over time, that crack gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like a foundation of a house. You crack it a little bit. 15 years, though, man, that crack's going to spread with weight and pressure, the ground moving, things happening, and it's going to crumble. It's going to, be a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you don't let it get that bad. Talk. Communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and why don't people communicate? This is actually the next point, actually. One of the reasons, number 3, one of the reasons this is a problem for people is that a lot of people were led to believe a lot of wrong things about sex growing up. And honestly, it's, in our experience, it's more from the conservative Christian circles than it is people I know who are outside of those circles. Like, it really is. Like, there are things that people are taught as kids in church about sex that is not only, like, wrong, like, not biblical, it's not in the Bible, or it's grossly out of context. And people who don't know any better, they go to church, but they don't read the Bible and know what it means, they'll quote it out of context. They'll teach it as if, well, they were taught wrong. So they just teach wrong. They don't even know any better to not perpetuate that false information.
Or, I mean, for me personally, like, we didn't talk about it growing up. Like, it wasn't something that we talked about. All I knew was that you wait till you're married to do it. And that was, and doing it before then, or I don't know, anything else about sex was all wrong and bad.
Any sexual act.
Like bad.
Of
Bad,
any.
bad. Yeah. All bad.
Sex equals bad. We don't talk about it. Turns out everyone's having it.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, and not necessarily even my parents, like just how I grew up. Like, you just, I mean, just hearing it from, the Christian circle. Oh, you wait till you're married and don't you dare, I don't know. Like, it was just, you don't talk about it. You don't even talk about it.
And biblically, you're supposed to. That's what, if you're following it biblically, that's what it says to do. And we actually did. We actually did wait until we were married.
Yeah.
And so, that was something a lot of people don't do. That's something we did. It was really hard, but we were really committed to each other. Yeah. It actually had to pay off a benefit.
For sure.
But yeah, simply being told if it feels good. Basically, if you come up like we did, it was like, if it feels good, it's wrong. Like, you're going to hell, man. Like, you're going to burn. Like, if it feels good, if it's sexual, if it's anything, it's like, of any sort. Well, then you get married, and you had this idea before you're married that you get married, then finally all that burden will be off of us and we can enjoy ourselves. Well, a lot of people, that mindset doesn't lift and go away if they were raised so deep in it. And so then it affects your sex life.
Exactly.
And then you're going, well, what, it's like, what's even between us? And it's hard to identify because it's something that's always been ingrained.
Yeah, like, are we allowed to do that? I know we're married now, so shouldn't we be able to do that now? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, where you grew up, and we won't name any, denominations or anything, but, you have a lot of very good people in your family, and how you're raised in the community. But you basically were raised that Baptist people are going to hell. Now, when I learned this, I was like, whoa, because I grew up Catholic. So Baptist people don't have a snowball's chance in hell. I sure as hell, no pun intended, don't have a chance because...
Well, it's because they believe once saved, always saved is what I grew up hearing.
Apparently, who knows if that's even true?
I know, but that's what I was...
I went to a Bible college, but I don't recall exactly.
That's what I was told, was that because they believe that way, that once saved, always saved.
Yeah, once they believe in God and they have salvation, that
they can just live their life however they want to do, and they,
Now, here's the thing, and I learned this when I went to a Bible college. They use the same Bible to justify their position as people in the denomination you grew up with that they use that same exact Bible to talk against that. They both came to different conclusions using the same text. And I studied a lot of this theology deeply in Bible college. And here's the thing. It was hard to say either one of them was wrong. Because you get to a point where it's like both interpretations of the particular scriptures and the combination of other things you bring together and compare and what's the overall, they both actually had good points. If you're unbiased, like it's like I can totally see logically and reasonably. They just choose to say, we saw it this way, we see it this way. Okay. But, but it's like...
But they're both great people, and that doesn't mean they're going to hell just because they believe...
I grew up Catholic.
They still believe in God. If they have God in their heart, that's what it comes down to.
Can't we just, I'm not Catholic anymore, but like, growing up that way, it's like, I mean, they didn't even want us to dance at our wedding. And I was like, that was our wedding day. I found out that. I said, we're dancing at our wedding. This is our wedding. And I didn't care who didn't like it. And we danced.
And you put my favorite flower in my hair.
Put a daisy in her hair.
I almost said sunflower, but I know it's not sunflower.
You're my sunflower. Daisy. Post Malone. Yeah, so here's the thing. We're talking about people being raised really wrong when it comes about sex. Either like you don't talk about it, or people go, well, people say things like, well, this kind of sex is wrong, or that kind of sex is wrong. You can't do it this way. You can't do these actions toward each other. The thing is, people don't know generally what the Bible does or doesn't say. If they're living from a biblical worldview, and that's much of our audience, is conservative. Some of them aren't, but if you're coming from it from that angle, if you look even just in the book of Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, that is erotic literature. Like, if you actually know what those words mean, but if you were to, like, paint those pictures on the wall, what those actually mean, it would be pornographic. It really would be.
Yeah.
People don't know this. Like, people, and so I'm not going to go into details about different kinds of sex right now. We don't have time for that. But if you want to know, this is one resource we found recently. I've had the book on my shelf for like 8 years, and it's literally had like an inch of dust on it. I happened to look at it the other day. There's a book by Mark Driscoll. He's a pastor of a church, or a few churches, pretty big one from what I understand. But he and his wife have a book called Real Marriage, and there's a chapter in there about sex and what does the Bible say or not say, or how are things misinterpreted when it comes to different acts that are sexual.
And like, I think there was like 2 or 3 questions that he asked about each point.
Is it legal, like biblically and in society, and is it permissible, like in Scripture? Is it a yes or no? If you were to read this in your church about this sex act and that sex act, and the Bible says yes to this, yes to that, you'll find it says no to very few things. It doesn't mention others so much, even though they're misinterpreted or used out of context. And there are other sex acts that are actually glorified and praised by God in the Bible, and you've never heard it in church. Like, almost guarantee, unless you had some really good people who really knew the Bible and they had a lot of integrity and they were very honest and upfront and blunt. So I think it's like chapter 10, but the book is called Real Marriage. It's by Mark Driscoll.
It was really interesting.
Him and his wife wrote it.
Yeah, we read it together the other day, and it was really, I was like, wow, like, why wasn't I taught that? Or why didn't, I wish we would have talked about sex. We have kids, and we do. They're 12 and almost 10. And we talk about sex with them because, they're going to learn it somewhere, and I'd rather them learn it from us.
The last thing you want is for such an important topic to be a taboo that nobody talks about. Because they're going to go learn about it from their friends or somewhere else anyway. Yeah. Like in our house, we have, right now, at the time of this recording, we have a 12-and-a-half-year-old and a 9-year-old who's about to be 10. It's not like overtly graphic sexual, like always like kind of discussions, but we joke about things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yesterday we did.
It's just, yeah, it's just, we joke, we've decided sex or any other super important topic in life will never be off the table in our house.
Mm-hmm. We want them to be able to talk to us about anything.
Yeah. Well,
and everything,
Yeah. I mean, because if they don't think they're allowed to talk to us about something, that's our fault, number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've somehow implied or told them in some way, shape, or form that you can't talk to us about this, or we better not find out you did this, or there's going to be, I get it, there's standards you have to uphold. But if they mess up and they're afraid to come to you, man, you haven't done everything entirely right in that area. If they're afraid to come, I want my kids to know if you mess up something, okay, there might be a consequence, whether from me or just from life. But I want to help you deal with it and get through it and get out of it.
Yeah.
Or whatever the most productive resolution is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want our kids to be like, oh my gosh, we can't tell dad. Which they think that sometimes to an extent. I'm a military guy, so sometimes I'm a little more heavy-handed. But I'm always honest. I'm always wide open with them.
Yeah.
So...
Yep.
The Real Marriage, that book by Mark Driscoll. I forget his wife's name, but they both wrote it together. It will blow you away. What is and is not in the Bible about sex and different sexual acts, and the ones that are grossly misinterpreted and exaggerated, completely up. I mean, I've literally heard some of these lessons that he talked about preached from a pulpit and in church settings, just wrong, straight up. That's not even what it says. It's not even what the story means. That wasn't even that character. That wasn't the point.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's a lot of people out there that, they will use religion or politics or faith or anything they can to try to control other people.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, yeah. So don't perpetuate ignorance. I mean, again, myths that we were led to believe about sex growing up, myths, or that things are bad when they're not. It does damage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now let's see. What's the next one? Number 4.
No bridge or balance between high and low sex drive people.
Okay, so let's say you have a couple. One has a high sex drive. The other has a low sex drive. So one probably wants it a lot more frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe is more adventurous. The other person is just, they don't need it as often, and they're just not as super adventurous. They're willing, but they're not, they're not like, man, we need to buy that chandelier thing and or something, or we need to swing from the chandeliers and, or something, or, or just, a super adventurous kind
stripper
of people.
Pole.
Stripper pole in the bedroom, comes down, the disco ball starts spinning around, there's music playing, strobe lights. No, we don't have any of that in our bedroom. Or do we? So you got people who... How do you balance that? You have people, if one person wants it a lot more, because this is a huge obstacle.
Yeah.
Because one person might feel like, hey, 3 times a week isn't enough. Mm-hmm. And the other person's going, I'm fine with once a week. Oh, how do you think you balance that? Wait.
Well, you don't be selfish. I have a lower sex drive. So, I would say don't be selfish. There's times that I'll do it for him because I know he has a higher sex drive. And I love my husband. So I want to please him.
And same with my wife. It's if, maybe I'm tired from working or traveling or doing something, and it's okay, well, she's here, and part of my mission as a husband is to be that for her. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean you get home from work and you're just beat tired, and it's oh, now I've got to do this, I'm obligated. No. But one thing we forgot to say on the last one, we were talking a lot about the biblical stuff. Basically what we've discovered so far on the topic we were talking about is that, with sex acts and what's in the Bible, what's not, what's out of context, as far as we can tell, most, and I say most things, so Don't write me a bunch of hate mail saying Brian says a bunch of weird, bad things are good. Generally speaking, it seems as if from a biblical standpoint, any sex act that is consensual between a husband and wife is permissible. If one person doesn't want to do something, like, no, you don't do that thing. That's called, like, rape. That's assault. Like, you don't force somebody to do something they don't want to do. But if two people are okay and consensual with anything, generally speaking, it's pretty much okay. Now, again, there might be exceptions to that in your opinion, and you'll have your justifications. I'm speaking just generally. There are exceptions to everything. But that's a good thing to know, because a lot of people, they want to have a better sex life together, but they both feel sort of chained, again, by the old stuff they were trained up in, and they had it drilled into their minds as kids, that if you actually read the Bible, you find out it's actually not always entirely true, or it was out of context. But just to wrap that and put a bow on it, it's like anything that's consensual, generally speaking, is pretty much okay. Again, everyone's going to have their opinions on that, and that's up to the individual spouse, couples. What you do in your sex life is none of our business, and we don't want to know. It's up to you, though. It's like, hey, whatever. But yeah, we were talking about the bridge between the high and low sex drives. The big lesson is just be selfless.
Yeah.
If you have two people who are seeking to serve and please each other, like, that's always both people's approach, like, where's the problem? Like, you probably won't. Not. Yeah. And at least if, like, a time doesn't work out, maybe because somebody's tired, whatever, had a long day, they have a headache, whatever.
Well, again, communicate that, though.
Yeah, communicate that and be okay with that, because you're serving your spouse by not, by honoring the request because they're not in the mood, or they're hurting, or headache or whatever, or they're tired. You're honoring them by doing that.
Yeah.
And so, when you seek to serve each other, considering the other person before yourself, it's amazing how marriage just isn't that hard of work, like we said in the beginning. Like, when you're just selfless toward each other, generally speaking, most of the time, when you try to be, it's just not that hard. It just really isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now on to number 5.
Okay.
The fifth barrier that we have here to a great sex life. The fifth barrier to a great sex life. It's what we're talking about. Like, we already just segued into it. It's selfishness.
Yep.
I want this. I want it this way. I want no. And you have people at odds with each other, or a super demanding person. I never understood guys who felt like they had to, like, manipulate or force women to do something, or try to. Like, number one, that's wrong, straight up. But I've learned, if you're a man, hear me when I say this. If you just treat a woman with respect, you treat her good, generally she'll want to reciprocate and treat you good. You don't have to try and, like, force somebody or manipulate them or make them feel bad into doing something they don't want to do.
Yeah. I
mean, if I'm way open and selfless towards you in every way, the human nature it's like the law of reciprocation, or something, like the law of reciprocity. People generally want to reciprocate, to give back if somebody's been generous to them.
Yeah, like, I would want to be nice to you and give you sex because you're treating me well.
I mean, if I'm not so crazy about one aspect of it, but you are, okay, I do that for you. And then if it goes the other way, it's like, well, he did that for me. It's this give and take. It's it's just not being selfish. And it's go to your photos. Go to your photos. I saved it in your photos for you. Okay. That we can read it bigger. But as we close here in just a couple minutes, we have a situation. It was something somebody was asking about in their marriage, and it's a problem they're facing. And when I read this, like the F word came straight out of my mouth. I'm just like, what a blank. I'm just like, oh man, like I'm just being honest. again, this is, whenever you hear about someone else's situation, you usually, going into it, hear what they have to say, but know you're probably not getting the entire story. So this is probably not the entire story. But it sounds like it's a lot of it, though.
It's her side.
And it's her side. Mm-hmm. But still. She says, my husband and I both have drastically different sex drives. There we go. Mm-hmm. She says, I'm the one with the high sex drive. So in this marriage, the wife is the one with the higher sex drive, the guy with the lower. As a man, I don't get that. But, it's because I'm on that side. At night before bed is really the only time we have any time to do anything. And he usually stays up pretty late. He works second shift during the day. She says, I have to get up pretty early to be able to take the kids to school. So here's the problem. I don't get any sleep at all because I'm staying up late with him wanting to have sex. He doesn't want to have planned days for sex either. I can't think of anything to make a sex life more boring than to plan.
Monday and Wednesdays, we're going to have sex from this time. We're going to do it this time.
Yeah. Now, again, if people have the only exception that if they have health problems maybe, and there's, it's that bad where they have to, that might be a productive way. I'm not a mental health professional, so don't quote us on this, but just with how cavalier and open and fun we are with each other, it's planning something is the best way to ruin all the fun. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she says he doesn't want to plan any of it, and she says, I have a checklist I have to go through with him before I can initiate anything sexual. Examples of this are, I can't initiate while he's watching TV. I can't initiate while he's playing a video game. No initiating if he just got off work recently. I understand that. If he gets home from work, he's tired, whatever he does for a living. I get that.
The first two I don't, though.
Yeah, and we're not done. And some other things. So, majority of the time, he's always doing something on this checklist. Therefore, I can never initiate sex. But I've allowed him to initiate anytime he wants to with me.
Very one-sided there.
Extremely. Selfish much. She says if I ask about it, if she tries to initiate, if she asks, why is it so hard for us to... She says that he claims it's just adding pressure to him to perform. If I ask him, he claims it's adding pressure to perform if I ask if we're having sex or anything similar. She said if I go to sleep, then we would probably never have sex. And I just don't know what to do about this. He definitely won't wake me up for sex. And I've asked him what we can do to help the situation, but he doesn't know either. Well, my first thought is what a loser.
Yeah.
What a loser.
What a selfish person.
Yeah. And again, we don't have all the details. We just had this, so we're going off of this. There might be more that we don't know, so I'm not just being a jerk. But look, guys, I don't care what anybody hearing this thinks. If watching TV and playing video games is more important to you than having sex with your wife, you're a loser. Absolutely. You are a straight loser.
And a selfish jerk.
And you're selfish.
Yeah.
This is a literal carnal human need, something that is a key part of the success of a marriage relationship. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if he's not having sex with her, and I don't know how old these people were. I think they were in their 20s. If he's not getting it from her getting satisfaction, he's getting it somewhere.
He's getting it somewhere.
It's not like he's 9 years old, impotent, no drive. No. He's getting his satisfaction somewhere, which is probably why he's never interested in her, because he's getting it somewhere else.
Yeah, he's either cheating on his wife or he's watching porn and getting off on his own.
Yeah, there's something there. But either way,
he's getting it somewhere.
This is a division point in the relationship, and the sad thing, it's totally fixable. Yeah. Don't be selfish.
Have sex with your wife.
Be a mature adult. Be a man.
Yeah.
Your wife takes priority over video games and watching TV. Now, that doesn't mean that she has the right to always interrupt you if you're trying to... Now, but again, if you have a wife with a high sex drive, well, that's got to be one of your big priorities, is taking care of that. Because I can tell you right now, if you deprive your spouse of sex when they need it long enough, they're naturally going to, not that they're wanting to cheat, but they're naturally, their mind is going to start wandering and going, where can I get this need met?
Well, yeah.
And then some guy at the office, oh, he's just so nice and he listens to me and he got me coffee the other day. And next thing you know, boom, cheated on you. Didn't mean to. It developed.
It started with an emotional affair and then it led to sex.
And it was wrong. But it's like, you know, like you contributed to that in a way. Like, if that's the case, you deprived her of a need that she can't get out of. Like, we can't get out of sexual needs as humans. It's in us.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take your fingerprints off, you know, pretty much, you know. You can't get the blood out of your veins. Like, it's that much a part. And so he could probably, in that case, go, well, my wife cheated on me, this and that. True. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Like she was wrong for that. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But you contributed to that.
You contributed to the deprivation of her sexual needs to the point that she was in situations that became tempting and were easy to fall into because she was so unmet.
She wasn't getting it at home.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't even believe this has to be said. Like I never thought that as a man you would ever have to say to somebody like, have sex with your wife. Like, your wife, having sex with your wife is more important than TV and video games.
Yeah.
Like,
it should be a given.
I never imagined we'd live in a time where you actually had to tell a grown man that. It's bizarre. It's weird.
All I can do is this.
Yeah, facepalm. Like,
really? Really?
Then I don't know what guy doesn't like sex. Like, every guy I've ever met is like, it's like they'll bang anything. It's like you gotta like keep men on a leash sometimes. It's like, seriously, like it's like the men's, how hormonally, how we're wired,
how you're made.
It's like it's like you gotta like lasso and keep that thing on a leash. But now you got a guy who'd rather play video games and watch TV rather than have sex with his wife who has a high sex drive.
That breaks my heart for her.
Yeah. Because what does she do? Like, you know, try and take care of herself, and that's another issue that people have mixed feelings and opinions on. Or go cheat. Well, you don't want to do that. You know, and, you know, because that's just going to lead to a bunch of bad things, and we believe cheating is wrong. You shouldn't do it.
Yep.
Obviously, I said should not. I was swallowing when I said shouldn't. I said you should not do that. I think that's a given.
Yeah.
But that blows me away. Just, yeah. Guys, TV and video games come second to sex with your wife and her needs. And even if they're not sexual needs, if she has other needs, like your first priority is your wife. You don't like it, don't get married.
And mine is you. Yeah. And it should be that way.
Yeah. And then you wonder why we say a good marriage is not hard work. Well, when
we're putting each other first, like why would it be hard?
Yeah.
It's not.
And a lot of problems people have where their marriage is hard or it dissolves their marriage and they end in divorce is because there was some sort of selfishness. There was some, you know, both sides being selfish, or one side so overly selfish that it was always a one-way street.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't expect, like you would, even if you're that selfish person we're talking about, you wouldn't want someone having only a one-way street from you, where they're always expecting you to do the thing, but you never get yours, so to speak. You know, it's a give and take, but if you're always the one giving, that just breeds resentment over time.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, it's just, there's so many, this old stupid beliefs that, you know, we're raised with and they're ingrained in us. And, you know, whether it's sexual or not, it's like, you know, well, a woman should always listen to her husband. Okay, I get it, head of the household, things like that. But, like, I've known some really stupid guys who make bad decisions. Like, maybe she should be questioning you. I think she should. I mean, to me, you're my equal in the relationship. I've had a lot of people say, man, Brian, over the years, you've got a great woman behind you. I've never said she's behind me. You've always been beside me. and I may have said this in another episode, but when I was fighting the war in Afghanistan, if a man and wife and dog are walking down the street, the man is walking his dog, and the wife is like 10 feet behind him.
The son's with you.
Right? Yeah. And if you have kids, or the son in particular, walking with dad, well, guess what? Mom is behind them 10 feet. Jamie, you're not ever behind me. Like, you're always beside me. It's like in a gunfight, your buddy's not just behind you. You're shoulder to shoulder, facing your common enemy, fighting them and destroying them, concentrating your gunfire on the enemy so you can destroy that enemy fast enough, and you both survive and thrive and make it another day. So you have to take care of each other.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much the episode for today. Is there anything else that comes to mind, or anything you think you want to reiterate that was a really important touch point for you? These were the 5 barriers to a great sex life. 1, undealt with past abuse.
Yep. 2 was no communication.
Yep. Myths we were led to believe about sex growing up. Maybe the unbiblical lessons that just aren't so. They're just not biblical.
4 was no bridge or balance between high and low sex drive people.
Yeah.
And then 5 was selfishness.
Yeah. Put down the freaking video games. God. You gotta tell a grown man to put down the video games and have sex with his wife.
And check us out at marriagebattleplan.com.
Yeah, again, marriagebattleplan.com. Go there. We teach you how to communicate clearly with your spouse using the same combat-proven military communication strategies that we use on the battlefield. Easy to implement in your marriage, and you can start seeing results immediately communicating better with your spouse. So, marriagebattleplan.com.